Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of Gay Man Thriving Thursday. I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Christopher Wilson, Doctor of Human Sexuality, certified sex therapist, and licensed psychotherapist. Chris, may I call you Chris?
You may call me Chris.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. I've really been looking forward to this training, and I know that sex is such an important topic for so many people. And there's lots of misconceptions and things, and can also be, just as we were discussing before hitting start, how it's going to be such a big source of distress for a lot of gay men. So I'm eager and excited to debunk some common misconceptions, to help guys know that there's hope and possibilities. And before we dive in really thoroughly, Chris, I'd love it if you could just tell us a little bit about how you got into this work, and also specifically what really led you to focusing on working with the LGBT community.
Yeah, I mean, my work around human sexuality itself started actually in undergrad. I actually was a theater arts major, and I took a human sexuality class for humanities credit. It was just kind of a fluke, and I was like, okay, that could be an interesting course. And I took this one class, and we had this health presenter there who came from Planned Parenthood. And after the presentation, she was really talking about how there's a difference between how European culture handles sexuality versus how we handle sexuality here in the US. And it really kind of sparked an interest in me. And I went up to her afterwards and I said, hey, what do people like yourself, how do you get started in this field? And she said, well, a lot of people have a degree in public health. So I was like, okay. So I went and decided to change universities, changed majors, went and did a public health degree, and actually ended up also going back and finishing my theater degree as well. But then I continued to work in social services and mental health right after graduating. I started out as an intern initially, doing HIV/AIDS education and outreach. And then I worked in mental health with young people for a number of years before going back and doing my master's. But when I was going back and doing my master's, I really made a decision to go and pursue sexuality because I felt like there was such a lack of information and a lack of resources around sexuality, and the ability to actually talk about sex. It's so stifled for so many people. And I was also seeing, this was my mid-20s really at this point, and I was also just seeing and engaging with men on my own experience of dating and sexuality, and just really seeing a lot of men who just struggled with sex and different facets, whether that was connecting with somebody beyond a physical sexual connection, or even having difficulties around erectile difficulties, or having interest in fetishes and being really concerned about how a partner might actively want to or not want to engage in said fetish. And so that was something that kind of sparked my interest. And so when I went into grad school, it really was with the intention of becoming a sex therapist. And I really wanted to make sure that I then started working within the LGBTQ community. And I started that by working at a youth center called the Attic Youth Center here in Philadelphia, which is a great resource center for kids who are 14 to 24 who are LGBTQ identified. And their services really work. We had a counseling program there, and they still do. It's an amazing program, free services for kids. So if anyone's in the Philadelphia area and you have a young person that needs help, definitely have them check it out. Is going with everything from coming out to some were trans identified, so understanding their gender and understanding how to socially navigate the world of coming out as someone who's non-gender conforming. And within that, I decided to work really in moving my direction into outpatient work after a few years doing family-based work. And when I did that, I really made that point of working with gay men and really advertising for that service, because the reality is we so oftentimes just kind of think, oh, well, they're men, so they know about sex.
We all think that we do.
So I think the reality, being able to have that experience of letting them be able to talk about sexuality in a really open way with another male is so important. And so many of the guys I work with, they really just kind of hone in on it's just so nice to be able to talk to someone who's part of the community, who I don't have to tell all the terms around sex. I don't have to help somebody else understand what a kink fetish is. I know you're probably going to know that, and if not, you're going to be able to get up to speed with it relatively quickly because you know the backdrop of the landscape of the community. And so important for men to be able to connect in that way.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like it's something, I think a lot of us like to consider ourselves as gay experts. I know I've had so many sexual experiences in the past, like I should know everything. But I think with that are a lot of, this limited beliefs and stories and things that we create, and I know so many gay men also relay a lot of their self-worth to, their ability to have sex, erection quality. Like I said, it's like we I think base our manhood and masculinity, on our erection quality. And it's just so many things that I think I'm really excited to explore with you. And also really what really gave me this idea was in one of our group coaching calls in the coaching academy, specifically our energetic attraction program, this topic of sex came up. And I just noticed that everyone was super captivated. I mean, look, there's 45 people watching right now. This is definitely, an important topic that people are interested in. But really exploring, how your confidence level and your ability to really believe in yourself has such a huge impact on sexual performance and sexual pleasure. And how so much of it, we think it's all physiological, but so much of it all is in your head, and not your dick head. So I just really wanted to, really start off by talking about, the impact confidence has on sexual performance, and the consequences that it can have, insecurity can have with sexual dysfunction. One thing I said is, insecurity is a boner killer.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of people who have anxiety around like penis size or erectile functioning quality. Like there's the difference between not being able to get an erection at all and be able to get an erection that's like partially formed or like 3/4 way formed. We all know as people who, male identified people who have penises all know like there are days that erections work better than others. And we sometimes forget that when we're being intimate with a partner.
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh yeah, I forgot that some days it flies at 50% and some days it flies at 90%, and some days it's like 110. And I think that so oftentimes guys get wrapped up into this idea that we have to really like have the rock hard erection that's going to be a part of performance. And the reality is there's so much more to enjoy about sex than just having an erection. And so reminding ourselves that our entire body is a sexual being is so important when we go and think about confidence. Like, oh, okay, so maybe my erection's not working as great as I want to right now. But that doesn't mean that I can't use my mind in some other way. It doesn't mean I can't use my body in some other way. It doesn't mean I can connect with my partner in some other way.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you said the word connection, because I feel like that's something that can really get misplaced with the whole sexual experience. I know a lot of us who have anxiety, who have stress, who have insecurities can really be in their head, really be, I had a client that was talking about inviting someone over, it turned into a hookup, and he was so concerned about the cleanliness of his apartment and also so concerned about the other person, if he found him attractive or if he was having fun and enjoying himself. And it was like, after it was all said and done, it was like it all happened. He was physically there, but emotionally, there was really not much connection that was made, and he couldn't figure out why it was kind of a negative experience, because while he was there, he really wasn't, because so much was going on in his head. What would you say to those who struggle with this kind of worrying, with the anxiety, and how that can, not only how it can affect you, but some solutions to actually being able to overcome that? I'm going to start with how it can affect you, though.
Yeah, I think how it can affect you, it's just reminding that so much of our ability to sexually perform in terms of an erection really is psychological. Yes, there is a biological component, but what we see oftentimes that even men who have a biological issue, where they're taking like a Viagra or a Cialis, so oftentimes they stop actually getting a great erectile quality over time because the biology is just one part of it. What they're really sitting with is a lot of the cognitive issues and anxiety and stress and the worry that they're going to get an erection. There's this whole self-fulfilling prophecy that happens. That's kind of the anxiety that you're talking about a little bit, where sometimes if we get one bad erection, it like just sinks us entirely. And we're like, oh, I'm never going to get an erection again. I'm never going to get an erection again. I'm never going to get an erection again. And then lo and behold, we don't get an erection. And so there is so much that can be said about just being mindful to be as relaxed and comfortable and less focused on the goal-oriented aspect of getting an erection, less focused on the goal-oriented aspect of having an orgasm and an ejaculation, and being much more mindful of like just enjoying the aspect of being with a partner, whether that is a hookup or a long-term partner.
Right, right.
While it might not necessarily always work to have a deep conversation with a hookup, most of the time you're not going to be like, oh, hey, grinder guy, I just met you. Let's go talk about a deep conversation about why I have anxiety.
Right.
But with a longer term partner or someone you perceive that might be a longer term partner, one of the best things we can do is really talk to them about the possibility that we might have some erectile difficulties or performance anxiety.
Yeah.
And have conversations about how we as a connected unit, a couple, can manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know when we're in the moment and things aren't working like we want them to, putting all that pressure on ourselves, like get a boner. Why aren't you working? What the fuck is wrong with you? Like that's not gonna help things. And yeah, that one negative experience can cause guys to actually, self-sabotage future intimate, occasions. But if we can learn to just relax and just love ourselves no matter where we are, because another thing I want to talk about is body image in a moment. Just love our bodies as they are in the moment. That's when things just really work. For example, we have a client in his late 70s who, before doing this work in the coaching academy, was taking Viagra, was really struggling with, erection quality. But after doing some deep work and really beginning to, really let go of those negative energy blocks about being alone forever and his age being a block, and letting go of the body issue stuff, not comparing himself to guys in their 20s, but loving himself for who he is and noticing huge shifts in his energetic attraction, which is one of the core things that we teach. He noticed that, whoa, things are starting to work again, like this doesn't even need Viagra anymore, and gets so excited when he talks about, he feels like his sex drive has just completely transformed because he's done that work internally. And
you're touching on two things that are really three things really that are really important. One is like not comparing ourselves with, if we're a man over the age of 30, not comparing ourselves with the 20-somethings or even the teenage people that around us or ourselves even. The reality is, once we hit 30, our testosterone starts to decline. So our erectile functioning is going to naturally decline over time. And yet we don't generally see a huge drop off at 30. If you do see that, it probably could be a medical condition such as low testosterone. But the reality is that, like, comparing ourselves to our old selves or comparing ourselves to younger people, that's not a fair comparison. It is comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah.
At 30, I'm going to be 30, or just turned 39. I'm not going to be 39, just turned 39. And comparing myself at 39 to my 29-year-old self or my 19-year-old self, that's not a fair comparison.
Right.
I was in a completely different place in life, completely different set of stresses, completely different state of physical being. And so that's just not a fair comparison.
Right.
I think for, trying to work with my clients who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s and older, who are trying to compare themselves, like, well, I used to have a really great erection. Yeah, you were 16.
Right.
Your body was in a acute condition. Of course you had better erectile functioning. Yeah. And we're also seeing, kind of going back to the anxiety piece, we're also seeing younger men have more erectile difficulties now than ever before. And part of that argument is that there's possibly a lot of expectations that they're putting on themselves, possibly because of media representation, like these ideal physiques where, the ideal, the muscular person or the super small twink person, and trying to fit these body ideals. But there's also an argument to be said that, if we're expecting our ideal partner to be that as well, and our partner ends up not being that, we might not be able to perform as well. Because if we set ourselves up to be like, oh, the person must be an 8 or above in level of physical attraction, then it's possible we might not perform as well erectilely because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always say comparing ourselves to others or ourselves in our youth, it's one of the cruelest things we can do to ourselves, because we don't know what's really going on with them. We can't experience what they're thinking and feeling. And a lot of guys, I pulled the group before this to really ask some key questions that people are really just dying to ask. And one that I noticed that came up again and again and again is for guys, over 30, over 40. What's something that they can do to improve their sex drive and erection quality?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is working through the anxiety part of it.
Yeah.
It's just finding ways to manage whatever anxiety they're having in that moment is one of the biggest things. The
Yeah.
other thing that we can do is we can keep ourselves in good physical health. Our overall physical health, our diet, our exercise, our stress level, those all impact erectile quality. So if we are really stressed out or if we are significantly overweight, there's more likely to be a correlation to having lower erectile functioning. And that's
Mhm.
not a guarantee. So don't just think that, okay, I've got a stressful job, therefore that's what's causing the erectile difficulty. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients who are dealing with erectile difficulty, it really is a little bit of a journey and kind of figuring out what it exactly is causing it, because there's so many variables in it, particularly as we go into our 30s and our 40s and we're getting a little bit older, we're getting more set in our professional development, we're getting more set in our career and other life variables such as like kids, for those of us who have them. Those kind of things really do take a toll on us. And so comparing ourselves to that 20-something-year-old who didn't have any of those stressors versus now, like that's not a fair comparison. And the reality is, if we can kind of minimize some of those stress factors, we're likely to have better erectile functioning. I also really encourage folks to figure out kind of what are their trigger points. And what I mean by that is, what are the things that really get them going sexually,
Mhm.
and knowing those. Because the reality is sometimes we fight against that to try to have a good sexual experience, or we fight against that to have a sexual experience. And sometimes it's really important to know if you really enjoy the aspect of pursuing and um, hunting for a sexual partner, you might not have a good erectile quality once you actually get with the partner, because
Mm.
the excitement part of it might just be the chase aspect of it. And
Mm.
so you have to figure out how you can incorporate that in your sexual dynamic. So
Uh-huh.
if you are really into like hunting somebody and you finally get them, then you've got to figure out ways to kind of play with that and say, oh, well, maybe they can go in the other room and I can seek them out. And that might be a driving point. Or maybe they can like, wear something that I can slowly take off of them and then
Ah.
get some excitement that way. Um, maybe I can be a little bit more aggressive, provided they want that,
Mhm.
and make that part of it be my sexual template.
Yeah, I love it. Gosh, there's so many things, so many follow-up questions I have to that. I want to first just really acknowledge something you said that's so important, which is how, so much is due to so much of erection quality and sex drive and performance and pleasure. It has to do with anxiety and with stress. A lot of times we feel like our erections aren't working the way we want them to, or the way they did when we were teenagers, and we think something's wrong with me, something's wrong with my body. I guess it's just too late for me. And we just kind of like bury that down with
Mhm.
shame. And it actually causes more anxiety. It's like we can get in this like downward spiral of wanting to avoid sex, having shame, feeling emasculated. And it's not our bodies, it's not our penises that are broken. It's in our heads, it's our minds, it's our stress. How that
Well, I don't like the
time.
term broken. Like the reality
Yeah,
is, it makes it seem like it's something that we have to repair or fix, and I don't love those kind of terminologies.
yeah,
I think that really puts someone in a negative position. I think
right.
if we can go about it saying, "This is something I've got to work on. This is a
Yeah,
journey
yeah,
to
yeah.
go through," then that gives us more of a position of power and
Mhm.
strength
Yeah,
than trying to fight against something that feels so hard and negative.
yeah,
Um, and the psychological aspect of it is so big, and the emotional connection aspect of it is so big.
yeah,
We have a tendency to think that, oh, well, men are very visual creatures, which in general we are,
yeah,
but that changes over time throughout our lifetime. As we get older, what we see oftentimes as men get into their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, in particular 50s and beyond, what we used to find physically arousing changes.
mm,
And the reality is those emotional connections, those sense of intellectual connection, that becomes a much bigger driving force. Or sometimes our fetishes and our kinks become a much bigger driving force than just, ooh, I see a pretty boy and he is my rock in level 10,
yeah,
therefore my erection works perfectly fine. Uh,
yeah,
so the reality is those change over time, and we have to acknowledge that, and recognize that, it being 50 something years old and seeing a pretty person isn't necessarily going to equate to an erection functioning the same way it did when you were 16. That's just
yeah.
not, not likely to happen. And I also want to kind of highlight, like, there was another sex therapist, Chris Donahue, who really kind of points out that we really need to have a culture that kind of talks about the fact that having erectile functioning vary throughout our lifetime is so, so important. And the reality is, roughly somewhere between 70 and 90%, depending on what studies you look at, of men, and when I say men, I'm referring to cisgender men, they are going to experience some sort of erectile difficulty at some point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be long-standing ED. It might be something that's short or brief.
Yeah.
Or they're going to have at least some instance where they have an erection that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or they don't have an erection. And the reality is that is so important to just acknowledge and normalize that most men are going to experience it at some point in their life.
Yeah, yeah, and not let that be a distressing experience. Traumatic. That could be a traumatic, small t trauma. Not having that, and then that can have a huge impact. That can create core wounds and things that you carry with you and can haunt you in all future sexual experiences, and it can really have an impact.
And I love the fact that you use the small t trauma framework, the idea of small, little, but what I refer to as little and big T traumas.
Yeah.
Same kind of framework though. Yeah. The idea that these little moments over and over again can add up to such a huge weighted narrative, big old T kind of like right on top of you.
Yeah.
Particularly if you've had a lot of rejection, if you've had a lot of I attempted to initiate and someone rejected me, and I attempted to initiate and someone rejected me, I attempted to initiate and someone rejected me. That becomes the sense of well, why would I even bother?
Exactly.
Everyone's just going to reject me.
Exactly.
It's so important to remember okay, let's try to keep that in a bigger frame of mind. Maybe you asked 10 people and they all said no, but maybe that 11th person will say yes.
Right.
It's so hard to remember that.
Yeah.
But it's so important to remember because otherwise we will kind of get stuck in the cycle of I'm never going to try hard.
Yeah. And then we give up. We let that become a limiting belief. In the work that I do, we call that assumptions, assuming because something happened in the past, I got rejected by 3 guys, I'll always get rejected. And then that impacts their, motivation and desire and courage, to approach that other guy, but they don't know that they're always going to be rejected. But when they believe that thought, it becomes their reality, and they don't acquire data to prove otherwise. So that just becomes their story.
Yeah. Clinically, we call that a cognitive distortion or a thinking error.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. I love the idea of thinking error because it's oh wait, error, that doesn't compute.
Yeah.
We're okay, our brain is saying to us, this is a bad idea. We need to let that bad idea sit to the side and find a new healthy way of doing things.
Yes. Otherwise we let those bad ideas just dictate us. And that can prevent us from, stepping out of our comfort zone. And I also call that kind of our gremlin that just says, don't go talk to that guy. He'll reject you. Don't try to have sex with this person. You won't get a boner. You'll be embarrassed. Carrie, they're all going to laugh at you.
From a narrative model perspective, we would look at that as what we call as a problem that's outside the person, and we try to get them to identify that as a metaphor and put them in a position of strength to overcome that problem.
Yeah, because that inner critic never goes away. We have to learn how to address it. Otherwise, we keep giving our power away to it. Mm-hmm. I love this so much. It's so interesting.
And I would also argue that we have to kind of almost recognize that the inner critic is always going to be there. I don't think it's realistic to expect the inner critic to ever going to be completely gone.
Ever.
We're constantly critical of ourselves in some way, so we have to kind of figure out how can we shrink that now it has become a big T to a smaller T. How can we just kind of sit and hang out with that critic and be stronger than the critic? Yeah.
Acknowledge it. Know that it's there to protect you. Acknowledge, I hear you're trying to keep me safe, but you know what? I've got this. Go back in your corner, go back in timeout. I'm gonna approach this guy knowing that whether he wants to date me or have sex with me or not, I'm gonna be okay. We can take our power back. And that's one of the core concepts that we really want to get across to these guys. Another thing that we really talk a lot about is how energetic attraction, how we show up, how we feel about ourselves, our confidence level, our security with ourselves, no matter where we are in life, is gonna, trump physical attraction every day of the week. Just like you said, we can be with this beautiful social media approved guy, but if there's no emotional attraction, energetic attraction, then sex might not perform. It might not go well. Is there anything you could speak to that?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things to remember, even before we think about our own confidence level, is to remind ourselves that attraction is really relative. Like everyone's sense of attraction, what you find attractive versus what I find attractive, is very going to be very, very different. And
Yes.
it is culturally derived. We have the ideology in the gay community. And one of the things I wrote about in my dissertation for my doctorate was talking about the body types that we have in the gay community, the bear, the twink, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And the reality is that you might find someone who is a gym bunny who's attracted to a bear. Not all bunnies are attracted to a gym bunny. And so reminding ourselves that like attraction is so relative and so subjective, and we need to recognize that like you might not necessarily think that that person that you view as a 10 is going to find you attractive.
Right.
But the thing that you might not like about yourself, or even think that you don't fit the mold, they actually might find really, really attractive. Yeah. One of the things that I was always really self-conscious of kind of growing up, and even into my 20s, probably even into my 30s, it's like I have larger ears and a larger nose. And the reality is those are two of the qualities that my husband finds the most physically attractive in me. And I'm like, I don't understand that personally.
Yeah.
But okay, great. I'm glad I could fulfill that for you. And so the reality is like recognizing like that is, it's so relative.
Yeah.
And it may change over time too. What you find attractive in your 20s might be different than in your 30s and your 40s, and kind of recognizing, kind of going with that a little bit, and kind of letting yourself explore the different layers of attraction that you can have. Right. But also recognize that like physical attraction is just one variable. There's so much more that we have that is part of attraction. There's the cognitive domain, just whether we find the person intellectually stimulating. Mm-hmm. There's emotional connection. Sometimes we can't even from a clinical standpoint, really fully understand like what makes us feel that sense of love with somebody, or that sense of connection. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you will have people who will be complete opposites, and for whatever reason they feel that strong sense of connection with each other. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those opposites do attract, and it works really well.
Yeah.
But going back to your idea of confidence is a huge thing. If you don't feel confident, it's going to show. And people typically are not going to be as attracted to people who are kind of mopey and
yeah.
Most people aren't going to be attracted to that. Some will, and you have to kind of question that a little bit. Like, well, are they attracted to that person because they want that person to be a better person, or are they attracted to that person because they see that person as someone they could maybe manipulate? And so we have to kind of question that a little bit. But sometimes people just happen to see the good in somebody else, and they can look past that. Yeah. And that also might be a really good, true connection. So I don't want to dismiss that.
Right.
But we have to look at all different points of view.
Exactly. And just another example of how we're all so different. We're all drawn and pulled to different things. And I think a lot of times guys have their idea of what's attractive, and they project their idea onto everybody else. And if they don't feel like they fit in that box, they disqualify themselves. And so many gay men, who are a little more seasoned in life, who may not fit that ideal mold, they just really count themselves out. And it's so unfortunate.
Well, it's so important to recognize that so there's this whole concept of the male gaze, which was crafted by Laura Mulvey. And she really wrote around it about being the idea that women are objectified for men's purposes, if we're looking at it from a heterosexual dynamic.
Yeah.
Later scholars wrote and said, well, actually, no, there's also this level of male gaze that happens for gay men, one of these being Richardson. And he talks about how movies like Trick, like they epitomize this idea of looking through this male lens of beauty. And so we start to think that, oh, well, if all these ideals out there, the lean, muscular men, I forget the name of the actors in Trick, one of them is Christian Campbell, I don't remember the other one's name, but they epitomize these beauty, and that's what we're supposed to look at. We then start to internalize that, and we start criticizing ourselves based on that. And then we think that all gay men are going to want that. And that's not the case. Somebody might want something different than what you think you want based on these ideals.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like you said, like, you don't understand it, why your husband is attracted to the features that you don't find attractive about yourself. And I really try to encourage people to know, like, you're exactly what someone out there is looking for. You exactly as you are, not who you're going to be once X, Y, and Z happens, but you in this moment. And a lot of people aren't willing to accept that fact because they have their limited perspectives. And it's just so interesting to explore and hear a doctor explain, in more detail, this how complicated, our sexual desires and things can be, and how I guess they can be so different from person to person.
Yeah.
Chris, one other question. There's several. I'm going to try to get to as many as I can and honor your time. One topic that I know comes up a lot for gay men is the compatibility topic, tops and bottoms. You know, two tops can't be happy in a relationship, or even more complicated can be we're both bottoms and we don't know what to do. What would you say to people who feel like they're limited and can only date a certain preference or certain preference for a
I would argue that variety is the spice of life. There's that old saying. And the reality is you can find two tops that will be completely happy with each other. And maybe they decide they don't want to engage in anal sex. Maybe they decide to make it a point that they focus on mutual masturbation and oral sex or frottage, which is basically the rubbing of genitals together. And they incorporate that. They incorporate massage. They incorporate like undressing each other as part of an erotic act. And a lot of other ways that people can actually engage sexually that have absolutely nothing to do with anal sex. So sometimes you can find two tops that can find all those other things on their menu as a point of interest, and they don't really need to go into anal sex. And sometimes if they do, they then take it upon themselves to use like a masturbation sleeve, like a flush jack or a fleshlight. In place of one person being the receptive partner. And then sometimes people do make a decision to say, okay, well, if we're both tops, one of us will bottom occasionally, the other one will bottom occasionally, and we'll take on those roles for the other person. And same thing is true of people who are in two bottom relationships.
Double bottom.
Well, and the reality is that sometimes we just take it upon ourselves to, find another way to find some sexual fulfillment. And sometimes it's a matter of really exploring different techniques and exploring different positions. Like sometimes what people think is like they get really locked into the idea of being top or bottom. And when they actually explore different positions and things of that nature and really explore playing on their own for a bit, then they find themselves being able to be a little bit more versatile, for instance. So like I've had clients who initially were like, well, I'm predominantly a top. My partner's predominantly been a bottom, but now he really wants to top. And I'm really feeling a lot of anxiety around it. Like, I don't necessarily think I can even enjoy it. And so I talked them through kind of like what is going on with that anxiety around possibly bottoming. And then also the reality of like, okay, well, maybe let's try to get you familiar with using toys first. Using like different types of butt plugs and then different types of dildos to the point where you can get to one that is close to your partner's in size. And then that would allow you to then feel more comfortable and more in control as you pursue sex. And then also looking at different positions. So like if you're bottoming for the first time, being the person who is riding the other partner, that is probably going to be one of your most comfortable positions because you're going to have the most amount of control. That control factor will help alleviate some of the anxiety.
Absolutely.
Also, reminding over and over again with men, you really, really need to use a good quality lubricant when you're engaging in anal sex. You want to make sure that you're using ideally either a water-based lubricant or a silicone-based or silicone hybrid-based, something that is going to be condom safe if you're using condoms. And you want to make sure with the hybrids, you really want to make sure that they are condom safe because some are, some aren't. But you want to make sure that you're using lube and using it often. One of the things that people have a tendency to want to do is use spit, and that is one of the worst lubricants you can possibly use, and it's going to make an experience really painful for a lot of people. And some people will enjoy the pain of that. Other people are not going to want to do that. And so the idea of even trying with a partner could be like, no. And some people, like they may have experienced like for instance, if you have two people who are both tops, one may have been in a relationship before and tried it and was like, I don't want to try this again. It didn't feel good. Really having them explore like, well, why didn't it feel good? What happened in that relationship? Did it feel forced upon? Did it feel like you were doing it only to appease the other person? Did it feel like you were never able to relax fully? Like those are all going to be dynamic. So I usually encourage folks to like really explore the roles and explore what they mean in the relationship, explore what are the other options in terms of sexuality that you can enjoy that aren't going to lock you into the anal sex realm. And also recognize that I think there's a tendency that most people think that like all gay men are engaging, or I should say all men in male-male relationships are engaging in anal sex. And statistically speaking, actually, it's not true. Actually, there was one study, I think it was in a 12-month period, only 40% of men in relationships, in same-sex relationships, indicated having had anal sex at all.
Oh, wow.
So, like, we have a tendency to think like, oh, everybody who's in relationships is automatically engaging in anal sex. And it's like, no, probably not the reality. Dan Savage was quoted as saying, talking about a study at one point, and was saying that like the vast majority of people who were engaging in anal sex were probably heterosexual couples, and not
Interesting. Wow. Wow. And I love something you said, how it all circles back to mindset and limiting beliefs. Like someone could have had one really negative, painful experience bottoming, and then they think, oh, it's always going to hurt. And I love what you said to unpack that. Ask them why it hurt. Ask them what was so, little t traumatic about that to make them so against it. Because, with different tools, techniques, toys, I guess. I don't know what kind of tools, but techniques and strategies, we can open ourselves up to not have that limiting belief that because it hurt, it's always going to hurt, and being open. And it's just about having, a scarcity mindset of limited, cut and dry, black and white thinking, or being open with high vibe energy to think outside the box and be open to possibilities, and knowing that because something happened in the past, it doesn't always have to happen again. It's just so interesting how something so physiological that we think is just so primal and raw and just, hedonistic and animal has so much to do with our intellect of, determining our experience. Also, you mentioned something earlier about how as men age, and I don't want to make a generalization, and also correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misspeaking, but it seems like you said something to the lines of, as people get a little bit older, the importance of connection and emotional connection has a huge impact on arousal. I'm not saying it right. And one question I got a lot of was, how to rekindle the spark in a long-term relationship, how to, keep that exciting, especially if, like what you said, that hunt is a big part of it. I love how you opened some ideas, and if you could speak a little more to, people who have been in a really long-term relationship, what can they do to really keep that spark if it just doesn't seem to be as exciting?
Well, first we have to kind of revisit like the initial point of the relationship, and two things about this. One is that many theorists will say that we actually have what's called limerence phase. And depending on the theorist, it's anywhere from like 6 months to 3 years. And the argument is that in those first like 6 months to 3 years, we go through a period of time where we are like in a starstruck, this person's amazing, they're wonderful, they're so great, they're the best sexual lover, whatever, in our mindset. And then once 3 years or so hit, depending on the couple, we start to get into reality. And that reality becomes really what I would call when we actually enter true love. I actually would argue until that limerence phase is over, we're not really in true love. We're still in that infatuation stage. So once we get into that point of we've moved past the infatuation, we're into a really solid relationship. That's oftentimes, unfortunately, when we start to see sex lives decrease in coupleships. So what happens so oftentimes is people get locked into kind of the routine of their daily life. And when that happens, they stop trying around romanticizing each other, around sex. Also, just the fact that we're seeing the person each day kind of reduces that a little bit. One of the biggest things I would say is like, when we're first dating somebody, usually we're not living together. So we start to like meet with them and it's like, oh, I haven't seen you in 3 or 4 days. I'm super, super excited to see you. But then when you are in a long-term partnership, it's like, oh, I get to see you in the morning when I wake up, but I get to see you in the evening. And there might be still some level of like, I'm excited to see you, I'm happy to see you, but it doesn't have that same level of arousal factor.
Right.
And so reminding ourselves how to get back to that early phase of the relationship and borrow from it to some extent is one of the ways in which we can keep a relationship going. And what I mean by that is it's not that we're going to get that newness factor back, because we now know the person, but trying to explore ourselves sexually after many, many years together and finding new avenues of sexual interest is a really big, important thing. One of the things I usually encourage folks to do is to explore new arousal and erogenous zones that they maybe haven't explored in a coupleship. And I'll use an example of a hetero couple I work with, where the assignment I gave them is, I want you to explore each other's bodies and I want you to find a new area that you've never been aroused by. And this is a couple that had been together for over 20 years. And the guy came back and was like, I actually discovered that I really love my armpits played with. Never would have thought it. And these are both people in their, at this point, I guess, mid-50s. And so they were like, it was a whole new area of erogenous zone for me. I had no idea that playing with my armpit was going to produce a sexual arousal point for me. And so revisiting that, exploring each other's bodies, exploring those dynamics that you really enjoyed. One of the things I hear over and over again is that couples say like, oftentimes in our first start of a relationship, we did a lot more spontaneous sex. We did a lot more spontaneous travel, a lot more spontaneous little excursions and dinner dates and things of that nature.
Yeah.
We have to remember to date our spouse, which I think, it has kind of been a long-standing thing that a lot of therapists have kind of gone back to, but it's so, so true.
Yeah.
If we forget to court our spouse, if we forget to date them, if we forget to go on dinner dates and travel adventures and weekend excursions and those kind of things, we lose sight of part of what made us excited about them in the first place. And that kills some of the sex drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I hear over and over again from my long-standing couples is they're like, it's so interesting. We went on this vacation and we had great sex. I don't get it. Well, yeah, of course you had great sex on vacation. You were in a stress-free environment.
Yeah.
You got to rekindle with each other things that you hadn't done in a really long time. And you got to explore a new area that you had never been to before. So of course you're going to have really good sex.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Just really, being able to maintain that spontaneity, that excitement, finding ways to, because when you, see someone all day, every day, just consistently, it's just, that novelty wears off. So you have to find new ways, to appreciate, your partner and just new ways to explore. I think that's so important and so good to hear, because a lot of guys, I think, feel like, once that sexual connection is gone, that's just, the end of the relationship. Time for an open relationship. Not that anything's wrong with that. But, it's just, I think a lot of people kind of count themselves out once the boners aren't working like they used to, in all areas.
Oh, go ahead.
I know.
And I was going to say, you're kind of hitting on open and closed relationships. I think it's important to kind of have early conversations when you're forming a relationship of your values on open and closed relationships.
Yeah.
Sometimes what happens is people go into relationships thinking they have the same value system, and maybe they even do. Maybe they went into it thinking we want to be monogamous. But over time, one person in a relationship might actually start to think, maybe I don't want to be monogamous anymore. And having conversations about that is so important, rather than going outside the relationship without, open, honest communication.
Right.
And also just to really assess for yourself if you really do fit into that mindset of monogamy versus if you do fit more into the mindset of open or poly.
Yeah.
It's so important to kind of recognize that. One of the things that has kind of shifted over time, like if we look at gay men in the 70s, they were all about sexual freedom. They weren't locking themselves down in long-term relationships in general. They certainly weren't thinking about monogamy as being a long-term package of relational happiness. And then that's changed as we got into the 80s and the 90s. And then it became much more about fitting that heterosexual dyad of like, we need monogamy. And really asking yourself, like, are you set up for monogamy or are you set up for being in an open relationship? Because for some people, they keep trying over and over again to set themselves into a monogamy dyad and they really don't want it. I always say actions speak louder than words. And if you've never had a monogamous relationship and then you try to enter into one, you're probably not going to be very happy in it long term. Because you're going to be stuck in this idea of like, I want sexual freedom.
Yeah.
If you're really kind of set on that idea of having sexual freedom, you're probably not going to stick to it.
Right. That's so interesting to just have those conversations early on, to have that important self-reflection so that, you really know what you're getting into, you're open with your partner. And it sounds like, and to kind of go back to, long-term relationships, it sounds like, that just that level of communication is just so important to just really be able to express what it is you want, trying new things, keeping that excitement and spark. Cause I know that's a concern for so many gay men that, and one thing that I hear all the time is that, and I made a video about this the other day with 2 naked Barbie dolls that, gay men just want hookups and how that's such a limiting belief. Cause when you believe that that's all gay men want, then, you wanting something more, give up on yourself. It's just another place where we can give up and not try. Although there's so many gay men out there that want just that, something monogamous, something long-term.
And I also encourage folks, like when you're setting up like dating profiles and you're setting up like app profiles, to be direct about what you really want in that profile.
Yeah.
So oftentimes I talk to my male clients and they're saying, well, I've checked all the boxes, friend, dating, friend with benefit, everything. I want to just be open to everything. I'm like, but you keep telling me what you wanted the long-term relationship.
Yeah.
The long-term relationship really highlights that's what you want and not everything else under the gamut, because otherwise you're going to pull in all those people who are looking for all the other things that you're wanting, and not necessarily getting that person that you want, which is a long-term relationship. The apps are really what you're going to make of them. And if you make it a point to try to find a dating relationship and you're really clear about what your expectation and your desire is in the app, you're more likely to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important because, a lot of guys, I think, are looking for long-term relationships, but they're still hooking up regularly. And then not only are they frustrated with like assuming all gay men just want hookups, but they're frustrated with themselves because they're engaging in behavior that isn't in alignment with what they really want. So it's like, if you don't want, to hook up with somebody, don't send that message that's all that I'm looking for. Because a lot of guys are just looking for a quick orgasm.
And there's nothing wrong with having a hookup.
Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Let's be very clear with that. Like, there's definitely nothing wrong with having a hookup.
Nothing.
Being honest and open about it, like, that's what you want. And being direct with somebody. Like, if you're not feeling the interest with them more than sexual interest, be honest with them and say, hey, I like having sex with you. You're a great hookup. I don't see a dating relationship happening here, but we could totally be friends with benefits, or we could be a fuck buddy.
Absolutely.
That kind of relationship. Awesome.
Yeah. And I think one mistake a lot of gay men make is, I'm looking for a long-term relationship. And they think, I used to think this in my 20s. I thought, if I have sex with someone, it's the most powerful connection you can have. And then they're going to want to be with me afterwards. Then they're going to love me and want to be my boyfriend. I just have to show them how good I am at sex. But a lot of times it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. You can have the great sexual chemistry ever with somebody and have absolutely no interest in being emotionally connected with them, or even talking to them for that matter.
Yeah.
You can also have really, really bad sex with someone you feel emotionally and intellectually connected to. Those things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to talk about that I know we spoke about before this call was, just, sexual, I guess, physical appearance and like all the hangups that we have about that. We've talked about this some, but how you mentioned you don't have to necessarily be extremely physically attracted to someone to have really great sex with them. Could you speak a little to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables there. I mean, you can go into a more fantasy space when you're with somebody. So, like, if you find them emotionally and intellectually stimulating, and you're not necessarily as physically turned on by them as you would be, say, somebody else, you can go into a mental space of kind of thinking about that other person. And as long as the person that you're with is totally fine with that, there's nothing wrong with that. Right. Everybody has like their celebrity crush that they fantasize about. No one is well, I won't say that because there are people who are asexual, but in general, most people have a level of which they fantasize about, whether it's Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans or any of the Chris's, that they might go to if they need to get aroused in that way.
Yeah.
Also, there might be certain kinks and fetishes that people have that are their go-to that might influence like their sense of attraction in that moment, as well as might influence their ability to have an orgasm or an erection or a ejaculation. And those are all things to keep in mind and be able to go to that space if you need to. The other thing you can do really is kind of just relax around the whole physical attraction piece and really just focus on the fact that you can be naked with somebody and just explore their body and find things that are new about their body that you didn't necessarily know you even liked. Say you have a penchant for people who are smooth, for instance, and you find yourself being really attracted to somebody mentally and emotionally who happens to be hairy. You might be able to find ways to find and eroticize that hairy body in a way that you wouldn't have thought because your initial template is to say, oh, well, I want someone who's smooth. Yeah. So it's kind of figuring out parts of that person that you find attractive, as well as kind of recognizing like your other areas and domains of attraction, the fantasy areas, the emotional connection, the intellectual connection, that all helps stimulate that level of engagement and sexual attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really ask that because I really want that to speak to the guys that are watching social media and they see all these guys with washboard abs that are 6 foot tall with perfect sets of hair and giant dicks, that if they don't fit that mold, then they're not going to be attractive to someone. And not only is connection equally as important or even more, energetic attraction, but, just like we talked about before, I mean, we all have different types. We all have different interests. We're all drawn to different things. And even if we think we're into one thing, that can change. I mean, before Andrew and I got married, he thought he wanted to be with bodybuilders who were, his age and tall. And I'm like, none of those things. But his sexual attraction has changed because he felt so emotionally and energetically attracted to me. Mm-hmm. And trust me. I mean, I definitely do it for him. And you know, we have a great sex life. And I really love just this talk. It's really helped me look at ways that Andrew and I can continue to, you know, build our sex life, to continue to try new things and explore. Because yeah, we not only, you know, live together, we work together, we work out together most of the time. We, you know, we do everything together. So that novelty of, you know, oh, I miss you. You know, it's like we don't get that. So I love the ideas of just kind of exploring new things. So really want to just thank you, Chris, for your time today, for sharing. Real quick, I promised, I know you've got to go soon, but that I would tell guys, I guess, just 3 tips, like the 3 biggest things, I guess, to have a truly fulfilling sex life. I realize that's a big topic, but if you were just to kind of say like just for like takeaways for this, what would you say?
Yeah, I think being flexible is one of the biggest things, and that is not only just being flexible about like what you find erotic, but also being flexible to changing sexual position, being flexible in
Like legs up in the air versus splits. I'm just kidding.
Well, that
I was just talking about like acrobatic flexibility.
well, yeah, do that too.
Yeah.
But being flexible in terms of like recognizing that you might have to change up your position that you're using, that you've been used to, like maybe you're so used to reverse cowboy, and you're like, oh, actually, that's not going to work with this particular partner because their penis and my anus don't line up in the same way that a previous partner.
Right.
And something that is really kind of, you know, a tangent. We could probably talk about that in like a video. You know, I think so being flexible and recognizing like you have to adapt and change with whatever new partnership you're in, whether that is a one-time hookup or a long-term partnership. And that's a really big piece. Communication would be one of my second things, and probably by and large the biggest thing. Because it's so important to communicate what our wants, our needs, our fantasies, our interests.
Yeah.
Being direct, understanding our limitations in communication. Everybody has them. And, you know, even in my partnership, I am a marriage and family therapist. I'm trained in communication. I still screw up things. My partner screws up things, you know, and so I tell people that all the time that, you know, just because I'm trained in this doesn't mean I'm doing it perfectly. I make mistakes too. I have my own penchant from my own, what we call family of origin, the family I grew up in, where I want to be a little bit combative. That's part of the family dynamic I grew up in, where there's like this little bit of, for lack of a better term, like almost like a catty dynamic of like fighting, play fighting, and sometimes a little bit argumentative fighting that I grew up in. And so I want to have that in my relationship. And my husband's not all about that. He's actually much more sound about it. It's like, nope, we're not doing that. I'm like, I want it. I want that. That's what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And being like, okay, nope. You got to check yourself.
Yep.
That is not going to work for you in this relationship. It's not going to work for you probably in most relationships. Mm-hmm. So recognizing, like communicating and fighting back some of those familial inclinations. I would also say, look back at your family history. Mm-hmm. How did your family history influence who you are in a relationship? Mm-hmm. It's so important to recognize how our parents or whoever raised us, their relationship set a template for us in our own relationships. And that includes erotic relationships as well. If we saw our parents who were being super physically affectionate with each other and lovey, and you know, our father was grabbing our mother on the ass, those kind of things, we're much more likely to do that in our own relationships. Or we'll do completely in the opposite. We're like, oh my God, that was so uncomfortable to watch mom and dad do that. I will lock down everything. Nope, no touching whatsoever. Yeah. Recognizing like that influences our relationship. And it's so important to recognize like that template is there, and we get to adjust it as an adult. We get to say, okay, this is the template I was born into or raised under. How do I want to make that work for me? And I use the example of like that quality of like wanting to like bicker, fight kind of thing, which comes from my family. Like I recognize like that is not something I want to necessarily engage in my relationship. Right. And while my husband and I have a little bit of that on a time to time kind of thing for fun, it's really minimal by comparison. And that's something that we've fostered in a healthy way. Yeah. And recognizing that we have a power to change that and change how we interact with our past to some extent. We can't undo trauma. We can't undo, you know, I won't say it like that. We can't erase that fact that trauma has happened. Right. We can hack it. We can make it less severe in how it impacts us.
Release that pain.
Change the history. Yeah. So recognizing where those things come from and recognizing how they were set up with our family really does influence how we engage in relationships and doing some diving into that. One more thing I would love to be able to touch on for just a moment, because you kind of touched on it just a minute ago around like the whole penis size thing. I think it's so important.
I was like, let's have another talk where we just talk about penis size, because that's such an issue.
Yeah, but just real quickly, like recognizing like the average size penis length for most men, it's somewhere around 5.1 to 5.6 inches, depending on what study you look at.
Yeah.
So many times men are like, well, isn't an average size penis 7 or 8 inches? No, those porn performers are there because they were selected because they fit that ideal.
Right.
Most men are not even close to that. And you will hear sometimes people will refer to the 6-inch idea. That really comes from Kenzie's studies back in the 40s and 40s. And for a lot of reasons, we can talk about his whole work on a whole different video. There were some flaws in it. And one of the things was that all the men were self-reporting. So most men were probably inflating their size.
We all like to add an inch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So recognizing that, and also recognizing that penis size does not necessarily dictate sexual satisfaction.
Right.
Let's break that down entirely, because there's so much more that can be enjoyed sexually.
Yeah.
And, that has absolutely nothing to do with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So guys, yeah. So if there's any big takeaways from this, which I think there's so many, this has been so helpful, no matter where you are in life, no matter what age you are, no matter what you look like, no matter your penis size, you can have an amazing sex life. And so much of it is in your head. And, one thing that I want you all to know is that, these limiting beliefs that are blocking you from having this amazing sex life can be released and turned around, so that you can have that connection. You can have that beautiful, love. And I know right now we're all scared, because of, everything going on in the world. We're being told to distance ourselves physically, but you know what, guys, this will pass. And if you want to be poised and ready to go, when this is over, when the dust settles, I really want you guys to type Coaching Academy down in the comments below, because helping you build your confidence, helping you let go of these emotional negative blocks is exactly what we do. And if you want to be like some of the clients that we have that have released those negative blocks, that are having amazing sex lives today, who thought they never would again, this is something that we can help you do. And because the time is now to work on yourself. You can use this time to panic and shut down, or grow and work on yourself. And not only can you, do this work in the Coaching Academy, but Chris, if someone's interested in really, diving deep with someone like you who does your work, how could they contact you and get involved with all that you do?
Yeah, so they can contact me directly on 4 different ways, really. So they can contact me through my Facebook page, which is Chris Wilson, PhD on Facebook. They can contact me on my work line, which is 484-469-8705. Or they can contact me via email, which is my first letter, my first name, C, my last name, Wilson, and an LMFT, which stands for Licensed Marriage Family Therapist, @gmail.com. They can also check out my website, which is chriswilsonphd.com, and find me on the Philadelphia Institute for Individual Relationship. I'm going to say that wrong. Philadelphia Institute for Individual, Relational, and Sex Therapy website, aka FIRST, which is spelled PHIIRST.com site, or Psychology Today. And if they're looking for a provider who is not myself, because I work in Pennsylvania, if they're looking in California or Washington, they can find a provider through the ASEC listing, which is the American Association of Educators. Wait, I said that wrong. American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And they have an entire listing of all the sex therapists who are certified in the states that they reside in.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. This was so much fun and so informative. I know I had a lot of great takeaways, and yeah, guys, if anything you found today was helpful and you want to explore more of this, we're going to list all of those links that Chris just shared with us in the comments below in just a moment. And in the Game and Thriving Coaching Academy, we work on all of these mindset issues that can help you with your performance, with your relationships. Just know that it's not too late. You can work through this. And Chris, thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure and a joy.
Glad we were able to reach out to this group of men, and hope they've been able to take away from it.
Awesome, my brother. I hope we can do this again. This was
it would be great.
Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your day. Thank you all for watching, and bye for now.
All right, take care.